Hello and welcome to this video where we are going to talk about data engineering interview process for companies like Facebook, Amazon, Tesla, and Netflix. Getting into companies like Facebook is a dream for many. The speed at which Amazon is growing and it needs data engineers in bulk, in a fashion which has never been seen before. Tesla. All of us know that electric vehicles is a thing for the future. Tesla is growing at a fast pace and it needs data engineers, data scientists in bulk. So how are you going to get in these companies as a data engineer? If you look at it, the number of jobs on offer is like crazy. 130 jobs for Facebook on data engineering techniques. Data engineers for Facebook, Messenger, Instagram, WhatsApp, and so on and so forth. So data engineering is one of the most talked about jobs today. How are you going to prepare for it? And what are the steps involved? Let's talk about it. A data engineering interview has multiple rounds. In case of Facebook, Amazon, Tesla, or anything else, you have a generic introduction round where it will be the first round. The interviewer will call you to understand what your interests are, what are you trying to achieve, what is your focus, and get the basic done. Second, third, and the fourth round are data engineering technical round, wherein the interviewer is going to ask you about how do you manage or how do you face your day job as a data engineer. Behavioral round is very important, which is also your cognitive abilities. Here, the focus is how you work with teams, and then you have a coding round. In this video, I'm going to help you plan and prepare for data engineering manager interviews, and will take you through a list of questions which has been normally asked in these rounds. You will have questions and answers and points to remember. So let's get started. How do you prepare for the interview? How would you go about preparing for the interview? Resources for big data and Hadoop 101. There is a 20 minutes video which I created. The link is mentioned in the video description section below. Resources for machine learning 101. I have mentioned the link of machine learning 101 below as well. What is IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, and function as a service? You have to get a good understanding of infrastructure as a service, PaaS, platform as a service, software as a service, and function as a service. Here is your video link. Then you have data engineering, behavioral questions, Python programming basics, basics of Python programming, because in the coding round, you might have 1 or 2 rounds, SQL and Python. And then finally, we have collected top 15 programming questions on Python normally asked in these interviews. So points to remember is always try to answer in a systematic way, which is known as STAR. STAR stands for situation, task, action, and results. In any of the questions, you explain the situation, who, what, where, when, and how. Then task, actions, what you took to complete it, and results, how your actions resulted into the outcomes which were favorable for your company, for a customer, or for yourself. So this is how you should start thinking, and let's go through the list of questions on data engineering concepts. So data engineering interview questions and points to remember. What is data engineering? What is the role of a data engineer or a data engineering manager role? You will try to answer that data engineering is not just about architecting or data management. It is also about understanding customer needs, When you are in a product company like Facebook, Amazon, or other companies, you will try to put a product together for which there might not be a requirement where customer would suggest. So you have to understand the customer needs, but a customer might not know what they want. Then you have to visualize a product and bring multiple teams together to create a data-driven product which can bring business value to not only customers, but also to your company. And at the end of it, data engineering also deals with multiple sources of data, which can be transformed, cleansed, profiled, and aggregated for business needs. So data engineering is basically the soul of these companies. And please understand that it's very important to lay out these points and obviously add your points as well if you think that there is something which is specific to the job requirement or job description which you are appearing the interview for. Next question is, describe your approach to create a new product. If you are given a task to create a new product, how are you going to go through it? What would your approach be? So identify a customer need. As mentioned above, sometimes a customer does not know what it needs, what she or he needs. Do a thorough market analysis of similar products. So are there products which are similar to what you are thinking or what you are visualizing already there in the market? Document MVP, which is minimum viable product with requirements and scope. This is a stepping stone if you are embarking on a new journey, a new product. Details and reason for each metric is required. So how are you going to calculate that this is a product which can be launched as a beta version and then you start improving on it? So that metric needs to be defined. If you are working on a product which already exists and you want to enhance it, you probably have to go through multiple steps which are right now mentioned here. You would need to analyze failure points and then talk about scalability and reliability. Giving you an example here, if you are doing WhatsApp during Thanksgiving or a festival or in case of events, the number of messages going around in WhatsApp increases at a very high scale. So at that point in time, if WhatsApp or any other messenger platform starts failing, it may not be a good experience for the users. Gather feedback. Automated and surveys. There are automated data collection techniques, of course, with due respect to personal information, and surveys. You should look to constantly improve the product and then select the right tools that can be used to give you the best performance, storage, efficiency, and results. So this is how you would explain this to your interviewer. Explain NoSQL, RDBMS, and data lake. What are Hadoop file structures? Relational databases are structured data in rows and columns. Please understand that these are your points to remember. Expand it with examples. NoSQL databases are there to provide a mechanism of storage and retrieval of data in a document format. It's not in a tabular fashion as in relational databases. NoSQL like MongoDB and Cassandra and others are used for web development or some messages which are in XML or JSON format. For big data, there is no single definition, but big data, as name suggests, it has lots of data, huge volume of data, and there are 4 V's primarily understanding the definition of big data. So velocity, volume, variety, and veracity define big data. Next is, what is structured data? Structured data is the most commonly way of storing the data today, like databases, flat files in tabular format. Basically, the data is stored in form of rows and columns. Structured data is something which is easy. You have been most likely using this and easy to process from a machine perspective. What is unstructured data? Any data which represents a data format which is not recognizable in rows and columns. It is the most unorganized and raw data which can be non-textual or textual, like tweets, images, MP3s, videos, emails, and in fact books. Unstructured data may not be machine readable directly, but they can be really pleasing to human eye. Give an example, right? In case of Facebook, you have photos, media, text, anything which can be published. So how are you going to manage that? Probably in a data lake. Next is explain a day in life of a data engineer. Here, these are the points to be considered. Understand the sources of data and context around data points is the primary job of a data engineer. Managing data lineage, that means where this data is coming from and what is a data lineage. Data sanity across the board. Handling data stewardship within the organization. Maintaining the source systems of data and staging areas. Defining extract, transform, and load, or extract, load, and transform for data transformations from multiple sources. Simplifying data cleansing and improvement of data deduplication, and doing ad hoc data query building and extraction are day-to-day job description for a data engineer. So if you take these points, note it down, and then create your own story around it. Next is, what is big data? Big data is a collection of data from traditional and digital sources. There is not a single definition of data, but there are 5 V's, basically 4. The 5th one is added: velocity, volume, variety, veracity, and value. There are 5 V's, but mostly in very commonly used language, there are 4 V's: velocity, volume, variety, and veracity. And these are the definitions. These kind of questions are asked just to see if you are well versed with the basics and fundamentals. Next, what experience or data modeling do you have? Talk about your experience around data modeling, like conceptual model, logical model, and physical model. Then talk about star schema, snowflake schema, and entity relationship diagrams. Interviewer might drill you down on factless facts. Factless fact is basically a fact table without facts, it just has keys. It is a kind of transition table, a relationship table in case of multiple other tables. You should look up factless facts and role-playing dimensions. A dimension which can have multiple types of linkages to a fact table. Giving you an example, a date or a calendar table. When the calendar table is connected with a sales date, it is about sales data, sales date. It can also be connected to shipment date. So a calendar is a dimension table. When connected to a particular column in the fact table, have different meaning. So that is what role-playing dimensions are. But these are some areas which you talk about when you talk about data modeling. Common problems data engineers faced frequently. This is something which is very interesting because depending on the type of job description or the job you are trying to apply, it can vary. But commonly, a data engineer faces data integrity and availability issues, building trust on your data, type of data ingestion, size of data storage and deriving information from the data is a different problem. Scalability and reliability of data, considering the processing power and configuration, and dealing with backups, fault tolerances, and failures. These are some of the problems which data engineers face very frequently. Now, I'm going to shift my focus to behavioral interview questions, in which the interviewer is trying to give you a situation, and then you have to come up with a case in your real life where you face that situation. So what I'm going to do is give you a real-time situation and make you think of a situation which you should be talking about. Remember the STAR behavior: situation, task, action, and results. This is a section which you should focus on being very systematic. So things to look at is initiative and leadership, teamwork, problem solving, interpersonal skills, and reaction, your reaction under stress. How would you react? So the first is explain about a situation where you disagreed or had a conflict situation with your supervisor or a colleague. How did you resolve it? So in this, you should not talk about some client issue or some email or some ego issue. Talk about a situation which you had a constructive, positive argument. I don't want to say fight, but there could be some constructive, positive argument with a supervisor, which was handled by listening to both parties and reaching to a common decision. Giving you another example, you can say that based on the design, you were working on a product, the supervisor or your colleague had a different mindset and you have a different idea. You both came together and solved that with a common ground. You took some good points from the other side and you presented yours and then created a positive environment. Next is narrate a situation where you had to take a risk to solve a difficult problem. Always use the word calculated risk. Imagine these companies like Facebook, Amazon, and others, they are under constant scanner of being sued by third parties. So they do not want to hire a person who is a very high risk taker. But sometimes you should always take risk. So my suggestion would be, think of a situation where you took a calculated risk, a risk which obviously had a risk involved, right? But then you also had a plan B, and you knew that the chance of your risk to be success is higher. Describe a project or an idea that was successfully implemented primarily because of your efforts. In this, don't talk about learning new technologies or doing extra hours or whatever. My suggestion would be discuss a high impact situation or a solution. You might have worked 2 or 3 hours, but a creative situation, a creativity, an area where you were really beyond and more like a research kind of a situation to talk about that, which created a high impact for a customer and the product. How did you handle a pressure situation? And then explain about that. My focus would be that in order to deliver a pressurized situation or a situation where it was really challenging, you should talk about how you approached the situation, laid out multiple options for a problem, and then picked the best suited solution for the problem. Giving you an example, let's assume that a product was supposed to be delivered, and then just before going live, you found an issue. Then you had options that go with that defective product, and then put a disclaimer saying that this is a functionality which may not work, or call off the entire product development or deployment. Inform your manager and kind of brainstorm it or try to fix it, and there could be other solutions. So pick the right option which you think, and then please understand that you should also talk about why you picked that option, and it can be case by case basis. Next is provide an example of a time where when you motivated others. So it's all about management. Motivating others is very difficult. So think of a situation wherein you had a critical timeline and other person or a colleague or a subordinate was under pressure, and how did you help him or her to come up to a situation and deliver. So delegation, motivation of others is more around leadership. Provide an example when you showed some initiatives and probably your best moment. So many people pick a situation where they learned new technologies or work many hours together at a trot. Those probably may not be your proudest moment. Talk about an innovative idea or a product or an impact. The interviewer is looking for an impact which you left on your customer. Next is give me an example where you missed an obvious solution to a problem. That means you were under a high pressurized situation, and then when you delivered it and when you retrospected, you said, oops, I should have done that. So this question is generally asked in an interview to see if you can look back and say, I could have done that better. The interviewer is trying to understand your retrospective nature. Even though you delivered a product, a project, or a service successfully, but then you should always do an RCA and see where you could have improved. Next is, how would you pass a critical feedback to a subordinate? So you have to pass an areas of improvement or a negative feedback. I'll not call it as a negative, but your feedback which can help improve subordinate. That means subordinate did not do a good job and you are passing a feedback back to him. So in this situation, it's a combination of teamwork, leadership, interpersonal skills. Here, in this situation, first you understand that this candidate has been always a non-performer, or he or she was a performer in the previous few cycles, but just in that particular instance, the candidate did not perform. Before passing the feedback, you would try to understand the root cause. Was it a personal issue? The candidate was going through a tough time, or something changed in family. There could be a lot of things which can come together. So think of a situation and answer appropriately. Narrate an incident where you had to make a bold and unpopular decision. When you are a manager, a leader, sometimes you are supposed to make some decisions which may not be in a position to make everybody happy. So, but decisions are decisions, sometimes bold, and therefore pick up a high impact case, discuss on why the decision was tough and how you managed this. It's a combination of leadership, teamwork, problem solving skills, interpersonal skills, and reaction under stress. How do you prioritize the task and delegation? Again, timeline, skill to task, and task difficulty matrix. When they talk about prioritization of the task and delegation of task, you should always talk about a scientific method. Timeline, skill to task. That means understand what is the timeline required. So when you are crunched on timeline, which most likely you are, then you cannot put a fresher or a non-experienced person there. But if you have good amount of time, you can try to give it to a lesser experienced person. Skill to task, the right people for the right job. And then what is the difficulty of task? So if you create that matrix and then define or delegate task, would be the right thing to do. Now, I'm going to change my approach to coding interview. How would you prepare for coding interview? I understand that this video is a little longer, so I'm going to just mention the Python questions which are asked most frequently, and these are the top 15 Python interview questions asked in Amazon, Facebook, Tesla, along with their solutions. Points to remember are: provide proper comments, multiple approaches and logic should be provided, ability to pseudocode, that means explain the code in a plain language, in a layman terms. You can write complex code, but you have to explain that code to somebody. So write comments, explain logic should be simple to understand, and your approach to the question should be very systematic. And these are some of the properties and qualities they are looking in you. So write a Python program to print a prime number between two numbers, 100, 200, 500, 700. Please understand that it's very important to not only look at the face value of the program, but find out those boundary conditions. I have solution to this problem is in this video, top 15 Python interview questions, the link to which I have mentioned in the video description section below. Write a sort function. Write a sort function without using list.sort. See, there are two different approaches to the same problem. Write a Python program to print a Fibonacci series. Write a Python program to print a list in reverse. A list should be reversed. Write a Python program to check whether a string is a palindrome or not. That means if read backwards or forward, it should be the same. Write a Python program to print set of duplicates in a list. Write a Python program to print number of words in a given sentence. Write a Python program to print number of words in a given sentence, which was done the last. This is just a repeated question. Given an array of n elements, write a Python function to search a given element. Write a Python program to implement binary search. Python program to plot a simple bar chart, but again, this is a little tricky. Write a Python program to join two strings. Write a Python program to extract digits from a given string. And write a Python program to split strings using new line delimiter. And finally, given a string as your input, delete any incorrect or recurring character and return the new string. So these are top 15 Python questions which are frequently asked in these big companies' Python programming interviews. If you prepare this well, there is a high chance that you might clear the interview. Now, SQL piece is not covered because this video was too large, but if you need to get some help on SQL, feel free to leave a comment below. So again, all the very best, and I hope you are able to get through in one of the dream companies. Thank you for watching.